All right, welcome back to the Tool World podcast. I'm your host, David Ju, and I'm here with Master Ju.
And here's Mr. Ju.
And this week, we're going to be taking a look at Se-Jong. Fifth dawn pattern.
All right.
Not that I do the pattern, but I was
watching. We had someone demonstrating in class, and you go, hey, that's interesting. What is that?
I guess I was demonstrating myself. Anyways, so there's a movement about halfway through the pattern. You're in a sitting stance and you cross over into a left diagonal stance, executing a palm pressing block with the twin palm.
Right.
And, well, obviously, like I said, I don't do the pattern. So my question about it was, well, that's interesting. The stepping seemed like it was behind the foot. And normally when we step and cross the feet, it's usually in front.
Well, I think what you're referring to is that X stance.
Well, I don't know if we should call it an X stance.
Right, but no. I think what you're saying is
that it looks like
an X stance. So I think that's key.
Right, but it's not an X stance.
Right, it's not an X stance.
After we look back at that.
And that's a good point, because I think especially, this is a higher ranking pattern, and you do see people demonstrate it, but a low rank might look at it and go, oh, did he just do an X stance? Because it kind of does look like that.
Right.
And I bet you, and I'm not saying that everyone does it correctly or incorrectly, but I bet you that there's probably someone out there that actually performs it like an X stance. And so what's the difference between what's going on here in Se-Jong as to an X stance, right?
Right.
Like in Po-1. So typically when we're moving laterally, and we'll go back to talking about X stance, but when we're moving laterally, right, you step in front. If you jump into the X stance, the leg is behind on the ball of the foot. But in this case, we're moving laterally, but it's not really an X stance. So an X stance, the foot is actually pretty close to each other, like really close to each other.
Right.
But in Se-Jong, that's not the case. So the right foot kind of steps behind
straight behind that front foot. And we'll post up a picture right here.
Yeah, so it kind of steps behind. It's not really an X stance. It can look like an X stance.
Call that a vertical. No. A vertical step. No.
Well,
just kidding.
It could be a vertical step. Perpendicular step. I don't know.
Yeah. Parallel
step. Yeah. But the thing is that what you just said, it's a stepping type movement. It's kind of like we take steps, right?
Right.
And where is that step? Where does a foot place in regards to that step? And so for the person who doesn't know the pattern might go, oh, that was an X stance, but it was stepping behind. Or maybe someone performs it and they do the pattern and they actually do it like an X stance. And it's very close to each other. But they step behind the foot.
Right.
And so that would be incorrect, according to the encyclopedia anyway.
Right.
So
in this one, the foot steps straight behind, and then that left foot actually just goes straight across into the diagonal stance, which I thought was pretty interesting, right?
It makes a lot of sense in a way too.
Yeah.
Because the stepping moves into that diagonal stance. It's not to say you couldn't do where the foot is in front and then swing that leg into that left diagonal stance. Not to say you couldn't do that, but it is a little awkward. This way, as you step, you just move into that diagonal stance.
Right. All right, so let's go over the differences. Right, you kind of alluded to it with the X stance versus this type of stepping that looks similar but is not. And what's the differences is that we have one stepping behind and we have one stepping in front. So what are your thoughts on that?
In the X stance.
Well, the X stance, you'll step in front.
Right.
But in this case, we're actually stepping behind.
Right, and what I was saying is that as we're moving, because the next technique is a diagonal stance, so we step in front, not to say you can't do that, as I said.
Right.
But it's kind of awkward because you're in the sitting stance, you step in front, and then you've got to bring this left leg and you have to swing it out parallel and then kind of forward into that diagonal stance. It's almost, in some ways, it feels for me like you could trip over your foot. Whereas if you were in a sitting stance and you kind of step out and your left foot just kind of moves into that diagonal stance, for me, it feels more fluid.
All right, well, let's still got some time left, so let's go ahead, and I got another question about Se-Jong.
Se-Jong.
So this one might just be titled
24
like,
movements.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so towards the later half of the pattern, you do a one leg stance. We're bringing the instep to the back.
Oh, right.
So that's a little bit different
And you
than
slap
usual.
that foot on your leg.
Yeah, I don't know if
one leg.
the encyclopedia says to slap it.
Oh,
No, does it say that?
no, I think you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah.
However, you see it performed that way.
Yes.
Right. Right.
But that's usually when you do a one leg stance, you usually bring it in front of the foot. You bring the other leg in front of the other leg. It's in front. Right?
Oh.
And so this is the one instance
right.
where you actually bring it to the back.
The one leg stance actually stops the foot from moving forward.
Right. So my question seems like, well, that seems like counterintuitive because now you're crossing the feet, and so would you not lose your balance? If the leg was in front and
So you're
pushed,
executing this technique where you're doing the front back fist strike.
right?
And then you basically, the left foot strikes the back of the right leg or the one leg stance.
Right.
I kind of always thought of it as a kind of like a target in a way. And it's to help us prevent us from falling forward. I think it's also kind of very similar to some of these ideas where you, let's say you're doing those jumps where you jump forward and you do a back fist strike, front back fist strike, and the hand is next to it. Why do you do that exactly? It's more like to help guide the technique a little bit more in that direction. And I kind of think that that's also the case here. More like target and to help make us so we don't fall over.
Right. Yeah, so just some interesting things about Se-Jong.
Yeah,
And
send
just,
us a note.
24 movements, and yet there's quite a few interesting parts to it, actually.
That's true.
Anyway, so let us know your guys' thoughts on Se-Jong. And as always, don't forget to be safe.
Keep training.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Taekwondo.